Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. Founded in 2013, the EHL has become the college placement leader on the East Coast. Sit back and learn more about the next step in your junior hockey career.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 183 of the E-Show. On this week's episode, we wrap up the Central Division with an EHL Original Six franchise, the Connecticut RoughRiders. Jake Basile chats with both Eric Lind and Stephen Brown as they gear up for their 11th season in the league. No other pair of coaches have worked side by side for the same organization for all 11 seasons since the league was formed back in 2013. Lind and Brown have worked to develop their own model of consistency over the years, averaging just over 9 commitments per season. Throughout this week's episode, the duo discusses the culture that they've built over the past decade and what's allowed them to sustain their success year after year.
Hello, E-Show, and welcome into our second to last episode of our Coach's Corner Chat. Today, we have our first double interview as both Eric Lind and Stephen Brown of the Connecticut RoughRiders join us. Both have been with the RoughRiders since 2012 and have been part of every season in EHL history. Gentlemen, we thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yep, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So, Coach Lind, we'll start with you. And throwing it back to something you said in last year's E-Show interview that, the 2 seasons under COVID-19 were so difficult and you guys were excited to get back to a season of full normalcy. Do you think that this season was that return that you were looking forward to?
Yes, I think this season we basically got to a place of normalcy. And hopefully COVID's behind us now. And, we're just happy to go in the rink and obviously without masks anymore. And all the protocols. So getting back to normalcy. I think it's very important for our team, the communication and I think we're past that point now.
For sure. And another question for you, Coach Lind, is that overall looking at this season, wins and losses, this is not an easy season for you guys. So with an overall younger team than most of the league, how difficult was it to keep the guys, focused on that main goal of development that you have?
I think, that's all we're about. We're about development. So keeping that focused and kids improving every day, as long as they're improving, they're going to be hungry, and they're improving as a player and as a person. That's our biggest 2 goals. So with that being said, I think every day our players are driven to get better. And obviously there's a longer periodization with us, right? We have players for longer, so there's a long-term goal for them too, right? So when we have a player for a year to 3 years, development is huge. And those players that we do have for 3 years, like the Dallases and the Wilkinsons, all these top-end players that we've had, the Bellas and stuff, there's a process there, right? And they see it, and like Colin Bell, the other year, putting up 50 goals and stuff. There was a process through his development from year 1 to year 3. So I believe all our players stay hungry that way.
Yeah, definitely. And we will get into that RoughRiders philosophy a little bit more in a bit. So I want to jump to you, Coach Brown. Just more about this past season. You told me at the Exeter Showcase that this was becoming very difficult as a coach. So how did you guys kind of manage that from the coaching staff's perspective?
Yeah, so there are a lot of factors, obviously, being younger and our balance of roster. The season before this, we had only like 7 age outs. Most teams are like heavier. But there's a lot of things that are happening away from the ice, society-based, that have to do, obviously COVID was a big kibosh on a lot as far as players not being involved socially for a few years. They lost a lot of training. So we've seen like dissipation, for example, in gameplay because of games unplayed, hockey IQ. has been diminishing year in and year out. I know there's some questions that we'll address later that you have set up for the interview. And so there's that has definitely pushed, because we are younger. And so they've played less games historically than, say, age out guys. And so that's taken a little bit of ramp up time to try to get them integrated in systems, for example. That was a little bit of the difficulty. Also, like Eric had mentioned as well, like coming through COVID in general, and just like our recruiting process where we only have one junior team. We don't have other teams in the building where we can pull resources from. And, and our philosophy as far as not moving players on very much during the season and keeping them for long-term development, like Eric was talking about, like, players like Wilkinson and Bella, for example. And so that's our focus. So what we have is what we have, unless, somebody burns the locker room down, right? We're going to work with those players and try to do the best we can. So those are the difficulties, are something that one, are out of our control, meaning we're just trying to fix what we're getting, but we are headstrong on and determined ad nauseum to try to get those players to the place where they need to be. And that for us is the big win. We always say up in the coaches room, like when that player comes to us, like when Dallas D'Amato said, I'm going to Wesleyan next year, for us, that's the same as almost like winning a championship.
Yeah. Absolutely. At the end of the day, this league is about that jump to college hockey. And one final note on the season I want to talk to you, Coach Lind, about is the big improvement for the Rough Riders was goals against, reducing it by nearly 60 from the season before. Was that something specifically that you guys sought out to do for this year, was improve the play in the defensive zone?
Yeah, we switched up our systems last year, so we had a little more buy-in in defensive zone, just clogging up the middle and blocking more shots and stuff. So the players did a nice job buying in, especially say mid-season to end of the season. They did a nice job there. So we wanted to focus on that a little more this year. Yes.
And with a younger team, Coach Lind, a good amount of guys in junior hockey for the first time, what are the things that you focus on early in the season to kind of reduce the learning curve?
Obviously there's going to be a step up speed wise and physicality. Obviously that's where with our development of skating and obviously just the small things, getting your head up and making those decisions much easier, like especially those 2-3 seconds for a new player, just getting in that environment and then get their speed up. I think those are the two biggest things that we like to focus on.
For sure. And getting now into what makes the Rough Riders different than any other team in the league is that prioritization of development. Coach Brown, this is for you. And you talked about this, you keep the same players that are there at the beginning of camp. You don't have a premier team. You're not really bringing in a ton of guys mid-season. And you like to keep your head forward, never to the side. So where does that philosophy come from, and why is it so crucial to you guys?
Well, I mean, I think basically it goes back, and the reason Eric and I have been working together for so many years is because if you approach each season like we are here to try and win a championship at the junior level, it's more towards a pro model. And we don't have the resources, in our organization. For example, like you could have organizations that start all the way at the youth programs, from mites all the way up. They have feeder programs and so on and so forth that they can bring players through the program, and they have a lot of resources throughout the year as far as moving players up and down. But here we need to earmark players. One, of course, they want to go play NCAA hockey. That's number one. And that's the league's goal. The league's done a tremendous job over the years as a leader now in junior hockey as producing players for NCAA 3. So once we earmark players and we feel that they can make that route, then it's up to us to take a look at that player and see what their deficiencies are, what they're good at, and what we need to work on. So there's twofold, right? There's the technical part, skating, stick handling, passing, receiving, shooting. And then there's the tactical play. And what we feel is that players will have one, the other, or both. But what they tend to miss is the middle ground, which is their individual play against somebody. So for example, if I'm a forward and you're a defenseman, how do I play when I'm attacking you in a one-on-one situation, or vice versa? How do you defend me? And it's not just forwards or defensemen, just particularly in a position, but it's in any position. And so we find that's missing. And then, as I was saying, some players have deficiencies in skating. So Eric, for example, is one of the best skating instructors in the United States, right? So we have that advantage for us as from the developmental side. But then that player might be not be a good skater, but his IQ might be very high, which might give him an up on something. So if Eric can improve his skating, right, and his edge work, then that'll bring him closer to something else. And so through the process, we're trying to figure out what the gaps or the players have and what we need to fix to get to that next level. And as Eric alluded to, the speed of the game is so different. So for example, like this year we have 11 players coming from the state of Connecticut, and with those players, we have a lot of players that have maybe won a championship in the Connecticut State High School finals, and that speed is at X, right? They're the best players in the state, but we also have best players from every state or every country, you know, on their teams, and now everyone's the best, right? So there has to be like this new type of balance. And then the speed, obviously, that's a step up, right? Everything's much faster. For example, like even during this off season, when looking at goaltenders coming in, the speed, what they're used to now, even at the 18 level and coming up there, they will struggle with it, the pass moving from side to side and so on and so forth. So it's like a big pizza pie with like a lot of different slices, right? It's not just like, all right, let's, you know, go out and try harder, work harder. We have to specifically tell the players what they need to work on, and that's done with on ice, with skills work, individually for a player, technically for their positional, what they need, whether it's a forward defenseman or even a goaltender, and then video as well, and going over video on games and what they did well and what they need to work on better, and so on and so forth. So it's a big process there. And to sort of circle back to the beginning of my response, yeah, we could go around and start sourcing, even better players. Say somebody wasn't up to the level right now, this second, the way we wanted a month in. And you can just go and get rid of that player and find another player that's better than him. But we would rather spend the time developing, because we've seen historically after 12 years that any player that's been with us, and Eric can definitely confirm that's been with us for many years, are the most successful players in college, 100%.
Yeah, Coach Lynn, that kind of segues me to my next question, is that you guys, a lot of your age outs are not coming to you guys for the first year. There is a clear plan and path for these players. So why is it so important for the Rough Riders to have more than just a single season with a player, or just even an age out season with a player?
Yeah, I think on development, like I know you brought up Karen Chung, right? Karen Chung's a great example. He's been with us now, right? 2 years, right? Brownie here, Chung?
Yes.
Yeah. And then so with him, he has 2 years left of juniors, right? And so we got him at a young age. So he's now going to Powell River in the BCHL. So we found a pathway for him specifically now to be a Division I player. So historically, Nick Germain, one of our captains here, is captain at QPAC. So obviously our league's not a platform you can jump. You could probably get a Division I commitment, but can you develop? So we need to find a pathway for them to develop if they're a high-end player, right? So with Karen Chung, he's going to Powell River in the BCHL. So that will give him an excellent opportunity to earn a Division I, hopefully scholarship or a placement, right? So we had Nick Germain do that, and also Paul McAvoy. He was captain for 2 years at Colgate, right? He was with us, and then we moved on to BC, and then he ended up being a 2-time captain at Colgate. Same with Nick. He was a captain at Quinnipiac, top 10 team in the country. So what we're getting at is that we can get younger players and still move them on to Division I. So now we're finding a pathway here. You know, obviously Chung's at Powell River. We might have a few other guys play a few games for Powell River next year. with our development model. So now I think we're taking our program to another level where we're going to have avenues for Division I and Division III players now, especially getting a player at a younger age that we can move them on to a higher level. And obviously we're with the USHL RoughRiders. We've only had one player in 12 years that could actually make that jump. And then now we're having another level where kids can make that jump more now.
Definitely. Coach Brown, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, we had one other player as well, Drew Lennon, who went to University of Alabama, Huntsville as well, to play from BCHL, from the RoughRiders program, originally in Colorado from our 18 team. But yeah, that jump to D1, when Coach Lind and our staff identify a player that we know that can have a D1 opportunity, it's best for us to move the player on rather than to hold them here.
Yeah.
Selfishly, right? It's great. Like, let's not tell anyone about, Paul McAvoy and let him play for us. But we always tell players, even in recruiting, if you're good enough, we're going to drive you to the airport and get you out of here. Like that's what we do. We want you out of here, especially if you're younger. Let's work hard so you don't need to be here, and which is sort of crazy in some respects, but that's what we do.
Yeah, so we're going to start showing that pathway here over the next few years. Chunger's our first kind of model player to do this, and then hopefully we'll continue getting more and more of these players, the Division I from a younger age through our development model.
And Coach Lind, do you think that will impact recruiting at all? Does that mean that the RoughRiders are going to look for younger players as a whole going forward?
Yeah. High-end younger players that want to make a jump to the BC or USHL. Yes.
And when guys are in the program for years and they're returners and they're moving on to the NCAA level or now finding these new paths, is that a signal to you that that message is resonating with the players?
Yeah. Once we prove the model, the kids keep jumping to D1 and they see a development model compared to these other junior programs, yeah, I think you'll have traction.
For sure. And Coach Brown, going back to you, something that you mentioned is, the focus on video that you guys have and the working on each player and their deficiencies and their strengths. So on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, how much time are you spending one-on-one with these players?
So, we have an open door policy in general, like players can come and approach us anytime they need something on ice or off ice. Video is something we'll do on the team level. We'll do it on the group level. So it could be power play, a line, shorthanded work, for example. And then individually, players can book appointments with coaching staff and come up and go over videos, even with the goaltending coach, whether it's going over gameplay of the last specific game or trends, for example. So the league and most teams in the league right now are using Instat, which is a fantastic product. I always sort of, when people ask me to explain how minute I can literally tell if somebody's scratching their nose how many times in a game. And so with that minutia, just like the NHL has, right, and they're using the product as well, a player can come in if they're having problems in the defensive zone, if they're having problems on the PK, we can really hone down the nitty gritty. Because most players are, and it's just normal tendency, players are delusional in some respects when they evaluate themselves, right? Like, oh, I didn't think I had such a bad few games in the D zone or in the neutral zone on a transition or whatnot. And then when you sit down and break it up and you can pull up 20, 30 clips and take a look at them and slow-mo and back and forth and really get down to the nitty gritty, you can see why. Even go back to the technical part where, Eric's so good at skating and teaching the edge work of players like heading down the half wall on a zone entry, and every time they come in on the zone entry, they're doing nothing except straighting skating hard and they end up in the corner. Well, maybe you should be getting on the ice with Eric a little bit and doing some extra edge work and working on your turns so you can have a little bit more deception involved with that. And so you're able to see that. Or maybe a defenseman is looking to garnish some more points and they're not getting enough. Well, you're not taking enough shots, and we can go over shot maps and take a look at locations and the type of shot. You can even, you can click, all right, let's see all your slap shots. Let's see all your wrist shots. Let's see. Then it's fantastic. And it's like having, 2 other video coaches or 3 other video coaches at hand So we think the product is great. And in reality, if you put up your coaching staff online, you should put Instat as one of the coaches, because it is such a good product. And it helps the benefits the players and the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You're hired. Instat representative.
Yeah, this is not an advertisement, Coach Brown.
No,
Just being honest
no,
here.
no. Yes.
So Coach Lynn, we'll go to you as we start to talk about some of the players from this past season and the returners that we'll have for the upcoming season. So first two players I want to talk about are the goaltenders, Nick Junkin and Daniel Newarowitz. So having two age-out goaltenders, was that ever difficult for you guys to manage?
I'll let Brownie, you can take this one.
Yeah. So once again, like trying to figure out like our philosophy and how we're going to handle things moving forward. And, Dan had come off a hip surgery during the COVID year, didn't play for a whole season, struggled a little bit a few years ago. And, what are we doing? Yeah, we can bring an age out guy in for a 1-year stint, but just the same as out player as a goaltender, it's sort of the same philosophy with us. Well, we have two guys, both coming out of the Elite Academy in Connecticut, both very competitive, working hard. Why not give these two guys a chance? Bring Ethan Roche, who was the younger goalie, give him some opportunity to try to get in a little bit, and let these guys fight it out and see how they can do. And so, like I said, our overall philosophy, at least going into that year and coming out of the COVID year, which was difficult, let them try to fight for this spot and see how they can do. And even going into this season, once again, Ethan will return as the 04, and we have Vince Lamberti coming in from Lawrence Academy. He's an 04, and then we have Heikki Fodor coming out of he's from Helsinki, Finland, but he played at Hebron Academy for a few years, then played at Minnesota last year at Minnesota Duluth and high school hockey. And we feel that these guys can be a good developmental goaltenders, rather than just trying to find that goalie for a 1-year stint at this point. So we're going to continue down that path at this point.
But I would say with Dan, a lot of organizations probably wouldn't have risked taking him back. We knew Dan. He was a good kid. He was battling injuries the last few years. And we knew it was his last shot. So we believed in him and brought him back. I would say a lot of programs would probably not have done that, brought him back because of his injuries. But he ended up really working hard, and really it just was a pleasant surprise the way he had a great season. So
yeah, absolutely, definitely did. 920 save percentage. That's amongst the better goalies in the league for sure. And as we talked about the forward position now, a guy that you mentioned earlier, Coach Linden, Dallas D'Amato, one of the best players overall in the league this year, top 10 in scoring, got to represent both the league and you guys at the college series. For him to get one of the high-end commits of this season, how rewarding is that for you as a coach, kind of working with this kid for 3 years and seeing him come out the way he did?
So, I mean, yeah, obviously, if you look at his past history, right, coming out of Gunnery, it wasn't a big point production guy there, came with us. And again, like one of the hardest workers, like, spent this summer here, skated every day. Like even this summer, he's been on the ice with me like three times a week, like put in that extra effort, like to that next level commitment. And my hat goes off to him. Like he put in his time, but and effort, and my hat goes off. Now look, he's going to a great school. He got a great future ahead of himself. But again, that credit goes our coaching staff and our development model and the character kids we're bringing in right now.
And as far as the returners go, you'll have Cooper Smith and Luke Festa back as far as some guys that can definitely put up points with a high bar that they set for themselves as rookies. What are you expecting from those two in their second year with the RoughRiders?
We're expecting huge years from both those players. I'm even expecting Cooper maybe have a big few months and maybe get some games up at Powell River or something. Like that's kind of the season where I'm expecting him to really take his game to the next level. And yeah, he's going to be a player, big piece of puzzle for us. And Festa, obviously, he's one of the hardest workers that we've had in our program. He brings it every day, like every shift, every day. So with that kind of mentality, I'm really looking forward to our leadership group with this bunch coming in, and I'm looking forward to a good season.
Absolutely. And Coach Brown, this is a guy that we talked about during the playoffs, that first game in Worcester. We had a nice conversation and talked about Dominic Mascari with me and him playing that his first game in December and then pretty much producing at nearly a point per game after that. As an 04, what do you think his ceiling is?
Well, I mean, the Dom came to us midseason. I mean, Festa was injured with the knee. Hennessy came out of the lineup. We had a few players with knocks, and we got a phone call that Dom was available, and I guess the tag on him was just great, good hands, good IQ, offensive. The question is, could we get him to play on the other side of the red line defensively? And that's what we worked on when he got in here. Started to obviously get a lot better towards the end of the season and obviously into playoff. And now with that under his wing, we know what he can do offensively. And so he started to gain confidence towards the end of the season. And we definitely see there's an up ceiling for him as well. So we're excited to see what he's going to bring this year. Obviously it's a big year for him, but we think he'll do really well.
Thank you very much. And as far as new players go, Coach Lind, Coach Brown has said one of the best skating coaches in the country. Joey Bisson, a player that's joining your team, said he largely picked the RoughRiders because of you, and knowing that skating is a deficiency in his game, he wanted to work on that. So, on a day-to-day, week-to-week level, how much is skating prioritized by the RoughRiders, or is it kind of a player basis situation?
I guess, yeah, I'm a big skater. My grandfather's a Hall of Fame skating coach. He started the first summer skating school in Canada. Taught like all the famous figure skaters in Canada. My mom was an Olympic figure skater for Canada. So I'm third generation skating coach. I don't think there's too many people out there that can say that. So obviously, yeah, skating. I've grown up in a rink. I think she had me teaching at 6 years old. Yeah, so skating's a big emphasis. Obviously, I think skating's really come to emphasis. I remember where was I? I was in New York Rangers training camp, and I remember they took at clutching and grabbing, and I was playing with Darius Kasparaitis, and he just was getting smoked. And I think at that point, I came to the realization that skating is going to be a key factor in the NHL, right when that happened, when the clutching and grabbing. So now, as you see this progression, that's probably, and that was like, oof, I'm dating myself, but like 17, 16 years ago. And now you see this game just getting faster and faster, younger and younger. You see this NHL, the speed of the game, right? Like they keep emphasizing, do they have the speed, right? Like, like people are talking about Jersey and their speed. And so I just see this game, and the skating is going to be a major piece. This game's getting younger and faster, especially at the NHL level. And you're going to see it in the college level. Like you saw Quinnipiac. You saw the speed they brought in the NCAAs. I mean, the skill set and the speed in that NCAA Frozen Four was unbelievable. So you're going to see more and more of that. So, yeah, I think skating is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle moving forward for the game of ice hockey.
And with your lineage kind of being tied up in the realm of skating, are there any lessons in the Lind family history that you pass down to players today?
Lessons? I mean, obviously technique and skating and all the edge work and stuff, but yeah, I mean, the biggest lesson is just, get a little better every day. Put your best foot forward. I would say that's the best lesson. But skating wise, yeah, we really try to perfect our players with the forward stride and our edges and A to Z.
And speaking of histories, Coach Brown, we'll go to you. And you've obviously had a lengthy career in Europe as well during your time coaching. So were there any differences in philosophy that you've brought back with you to the States?
Well, I mean, we're many years out, I'm coaching now almost 40 years, but um, the type of work ethic in Europe is basically year round. Meaning the teams, especially junior teams, they never really break. They train in the off season together. They do their off ice all year. Here, it was something actually Eric and I tried to do a number of years ago, and we started even with our youth programs to go with year-round programs. But we're in a different society. It didn't really take a little bit. And then, of course, when professional athletes, guys like Tom Brady started hiring their own trainers and nutritionists and so on, and that got to hockey. Guys sort of break up in the season. So, with Europe, like I said, it's year round. With us, it's seasonal. So some guys, like Eric was saying, Dallas D'Amato or Kieran, they'll come here and stay here for the summer to work with Eric. And then you have other guys that just go back home and work on their own. So from that standpoint, the training piece is a little bit different. So you don't have those players all year round, which would be nice, of course, but that's a little difficult. And then the game is different, of course, with a bigger ice sheet over there. Players have a lot more room. For example, we'll have 4 imports this year, 2 forwards from Sweden, one from Norway, and then our goaltender from Finland. But those guys, one of them was on the ice, Klaus Jonsson from Sundsvall Hockey in Sweden. He was on the ice with me the other day. Funny story here. So the first drill we did, steps on the ice, it's just turn off the wall on a shot, snaps his stick on the first shot, which was hysterical. I told him he should Instagram it. He'd probably get 1 million hits, on his first shot in the United States. But the wall's closer, when we were talking about it on the ice, and he's not played on the tight pond before. So that's going to be different. Everything's going to be a lot faster. He's not going to have the time and space that he had. And that's a big difference, whether players are here, coming here, or even players going the other way, back to Europe or to Europe for the first time, and where they have more time and space could be better for a certain player, depending on their style of play, from that perspective. But the philosophy too, also here, has always been a little bit tougher hockey, a little bit more hard hitting hockey. The hockey in Europe is a little bit more free flowing and a little bit more sexier in some ways. But I've been able to balance a little bit of both. And, Eric and I always continuing to learn. We like to hear what the Russians are doing and what the Swedes are doing, and the Germans, and what are they doing on ice? What are they doing off ice? And, we have a lot of contacts around the world, and it's just nice to just talk with guys and see where they're at and what they're doing and how they're approaching in-season work and off-season work and goaltenders and video and so on and so forth. So you're always learning. The coaching staff's always learning, just like the players are. And that's the neat thing about hockey. It's big, but it's also very small in its own way. And it's sort of nice and comfortable piece. But the experience has helped, and especially now with us bringing in Europeans, and now with the ability in the league with more imports available, that's something that's very interesting for us for the future as far as Europe is concerned.
Definitely. Thank you very much for that. And Coach Lynn, your background being heavy at the college level, playing at UNH, coaching at Yale, do you think kind of having that close contact with the college game has impacted your guys' model at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think any experience you have, right? So as a player at the NCAA, and I was really fortunate with UNH. We went to 2 Frozen Fours, lost 1 NCAA finals against Maine in 2.5 overtimes. That was a rough one. But so with that experience, and then obviously going on to Yale and helping them out, and at the time when I was at Yale, that was the first time they were number 1 in the country. So we made some nice runs too on the NCAAs there. So that was, both those experiences were phenomenal for me as a player and coach, and the connections you make and the people you meet through those colleges. I mean, is unbelievable. Like I got to work under Keith Elaine at Yale there. Actually, the year I left, they ended up winning the NCAA. So I'm not meant to win the NCAA title. But that being said, though, yeah, it obviously, and me also being a personal trainer too on ice, like from the NHL level to 6 years old, like the more you can develop talent, it gives you a better perspective as a coach, right? And the more experience you're seeing these players, is going to give you a wealth of knowledge to help develop your team and players. Yes. So yes, I'm very fortunate. Even at the pro level, being a player coach at the pro level helped me immensely too. So having all aspects of, pro hockey, being a player coach at the pro level, being a player coach at the college level, like all those experiences really just help you be a better coach and help develop your players, and obviously also help with your coaching staff, right? Like our coach, we have, besides me and Coach Brown, we have like 3 or 4 other people that are trying to move on up the ranks. So with those connections too, and the experience helps them also.
Right. And you did mention that the pro career as well. There was a stop with the Danbury Trashers, the sort of legendary team in the world of hockey. So I have to ask, did you watch the documentary on them that came out a couple of years ago, and what was your reaction to it if you did?
I did watch it. My wife really wanted to watch it, so I had to watch that. Obviously my experience with the Trashers was unbelievable because I was just hired to play home games, no practices or anything. So and I was coaching full time at the time. So I would just come in and play home games. So it was definitely a nice experience for me. But yeah, that was probably one of the toughest teams I ever played on. So that, like, definitely toughest team by far ever played on. And it was a good experience. Place was always, atmosphere is awesome. Owners were awesome. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
It's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Coach Brown, I saw in an interview that you did, you said it's very important for young hockey players to play a lot of other sports in addition to hockey. So, why do you think that's so important? Maybe in a time where people are starting to focus a little bit more on the one sport that they want to play.
Right. So, when I was growing up, you would play every sport. In school, gym was, not just the president's test and push-ups, right? You're doing basketball, volleyball, dodgeball, which is illegal now, like you would do everything, right? So when I spoke in the beginning interview about hockey IQ as another piece and tactics, what's happening is because players are not doing this all the time in other sports and team sports, even like lacrosse, for example, soccer, they don't understand the spatial awareness the same as players have done in the past. So sport, it's not just 5-on-5, or soccer, it's 10-on-10. It's small 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-2, 3-on-3 situations, right? So the more you can do that, the better you can adapt to different types of tactical things. And so what we're seeing now is that players, as you mentioned, are specializing in the sport and only playing hockey. It's one thing that somebody's doing a lesson with Eric, right? 1-on-1, maybe a 2-on-1, right? Small scenario. But then where's the team element? Sometimes you'll run a private training with a couple more guys and work on some tactical things, but it's not the same. And then what we're seeing too in youth hockey, because I have clients too, I'll ask a player, so what'd you do this week in the spring or in the summer? Oh, well, we were at the beach this day, and went to the city to go to a museum. And well, when's your next thing? Well, I'm seeing you on Thursday. Maybe say that was on Tuesday. Well, what are you doing in between hockey wise or other sport wise? Well, maybe I'm just stick handling in the back, but I would rather have them do something else, like go out with friends and play. I remember even during COVID, just walking around my area, we never saw kids outside. Even now driving to work, you don't see children in the playground playing sport. It's only when it's organized, if the baseball team's playing, like a little league team, or there's soccer on the weekends, but you don't see players and people just playing like like in Wayne's World, game on. Like stuff's not going on. And so I think that that's a deficiency, and other sports can help as well, as far as agility is concerned, and conditioning and so on and so forth. So especially at the young ages, it's super critical. We're definitely seeing a little bit or a lot of bit of IQ deficiencies nowadays, comparatively to say when we started 12 years ago. It's definitely we need to spend more time teaching the tactical part of the game,
or just have them play 3-on-3 hockey.
I'm sure they love that the most. So finally, for you guys, you both win with this organization since they were the Oilers back in the day, and you've been in this league since the start. So for both you guys, we'll start with Coach Lind. What has some of the big changes been that you've noticed overall in the landscape of junior hockey?
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, obviously since we began this journey, the landscape's changed immensely, right? You have the EJ, and now I'd say over the last 5 years, you have the NA coming in. So I'd say you have more non-pay to play leagues around us than 10 years ago. But I really have to take my hat off to our league. Our league's just done an excellent job of really moving players on to college hockey. So I'd say the biggest thing is that we really established ourselves as a league over the last 5-6 years of really moving on NCAA players. And yeah, I can't be I'm very proud to be a part of this league, and I think we're doing an excellent job, and we know who we are. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. My takeaway over the last 12 years doing this is that we really established a really great league here.
And for you, Coach Brown?
I mean, definitely the influx of hundreds of new junior teams, whether they're the top tier teams or elite teams, and different leagues out there. So it's been watered down. But there's also a need to, and somewhat, because there are also more college teams as well. Not, of course, the NCAA is sort of locked in at about 60 plus D1 teams, and now even the D3s are starting to, creep up a little bit, up past the upper 90 numbers now. But there's so many more teams in the ACHA and other types of college teams, even Canadian teams. So there is room for players to play at university, but our goal as an organization is the NCAA route, right? So that's something that we want to make sure that we're taking care of as our focus. But since the growth is so big across the board, it has been a little bit diluted. It's very difficult for a player to figure out if they're 18. Where am I playing junior hockey? It's enough if you're from the United States. You can imagine, when we're recruiting in Europe, like how to explain the junior landscape in the United States. It's mind-boggling, and the United States is so big too as well. So I think that's a huge difference that's happened since the beginning. Just the influx of literally hundreds of teams in the junior level.
Great, guys. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and best of luck with the season, best of luck with camp, and we can't wait to see you guys at Worcester Showcase.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.